Hello everybody, it's Foxy speaking, and welcome to another episode of Foxy's Fun Inspirational Chats. And today I will be your host. And in this episode, this is going to be about a little boy who was doing a paper round one morning, which he does 4 mornings a week. He does a paper round. And one day he saw something extraordinary. The young boy's name was Richard, and Richard despite being 12 years of age, he enjoyed doing a paper round before going to school. One morning, as he was doing his paper round, he spotted a stray little cat. Although it would have been against the rules of his work to stop and pick up a stray cat, but instead he decided to stop his bike and see the cat. He only had about 4 more rounds to do before finishing up for the morning. He stopped about 50 yards away from the cat. Then he began to pedal the bike slowly and steadily until he saw the cat. And once he was close enough, he saw a very cute tortoiseshell-like kitten, looking rather malnourished and extremely full of timidity. "Hello, Puss," said Richard. "Hello." The young boy carefully put his bike against the lamppost so that it wouldn't make a sound, and gently but carefully walked over towards the malnourished looking tortoiseshell kitten. "It's okay, pussycat," Richard said. "I won't hurt you." He then put his hand in his pocket and got out a pistachio nut. He opened the shell and put the pistachio nut in front of the kitten. The kitten sniffed the pistachio nut, and before long, nom 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 nom, the tortoiseshell cat had eaten up the pistachio nut Richard had given it. "Meow, meow, meow," went the little tortoiseshell cat. "I've got to go now, Puss," said Richard. "I've got to go." And so Richard picked up his bike and began to cycle. But the cat began to follow. It was about 30 yards behind the bicycle and would always stop about 30 yards behind the bicycle whenever Richard had to stop and chuck over a newspaper. Although he only had about 4 more rounds to do, he had to do them at various different addresses. Once his paper round was done, Richard arrived at the shop. He parked the bike and put a little bike lock on the lamppost and walked into the shop, but the cat inadvertently followed him into the shop. Well, job's done now, and as he walked into the manager's office of the shop, who paid him to do the paper round, he was like, well, boss." "Ah, hello, young Richard," said the boss. "Ah, boss," young Richard said as he walked in and greeted the boss with a nice, strong, firm handshake. The boss was a kind man and rather fatherly-like. Well, Richard, my son," said the boss. "I see you have completed your task for this morning, before school." "Oh, yes, boss," Richard said. "I very much completed." As Richard was debriefing everything he'd done work-wise to the boss noticed the malnourished little tortoiseshell kitten standing beside him. "So yes, and so all is done. I know I'm a little early, but I've done everything." Well, yes," the boss said to Richard. It's good you got everything done reasonably early and on time, my son, but look what's sitting beside you on your left-hand side." What's beside me on my left-hand side?" Richard then looked for himself and saw the little malnourished-looking tortoiseshell kitten he had encountered. "Pussy cat?" Richard said, looking at the kitten in surprise. "Meow, meow," went the little kitten. "You followed me after I fed you the pistachio nut." "You fed the cat a pistachio nut whilst doing your paper round this morning, my son?" the boss asked in surprise. "Oh yes, boss," Richard responded. I hope it's not too much." "Well, no, my son," said the boss. "It's very kind of you, but you could have at least said that earlier on." "I know, boss," Richard said. "I'm sorry, boss." "Not to worry, my son. I think you should take the little kitten home to your parents. And they ought to take him to a vet." "I will do, boss. See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow, my son," said the boss. "Have a good day at school." "I will. Goodbye," Richard said, and so he and the kitten walked out of the boss manager's office and walked back home, as he still had a bit of time to have a decent set of breakfast before going into school, since his school was only about a 10-minute walk away from his home. As Richard took the malnourished-looking tortoiseshell kitten home to his home, his mother, who was waiting for him alongside his father, smoking a pipe whilst watching the news on the television, he was like, "Mum, Dad, this kitten needs our help." He picked up the kitten and held it. Richard's parents looked at Richard holding the very malnourished, tiny-looking tortoiseshell kitten. "Oh my goodness, who could dare treat a cat like that?" Richard's father said in shock. "This little kitten needs our help," said Richard's mother. "Well, Richard, your breakfast is ready. Once you've had your breakfast, why don't you go to school? If you go to school, why don't I take the little kitten to the vet's?" "That should be brilliant," Richard said. "Please do take him to the vet and see what gender this kitten is." "I'm worried about the kitten," Richard said. "I don't think it's looked after well, and I think does not have a home." "It's quite likely the kitten, Richard, is a stray," said his father. "Your mother will take him to the vet, so run along and have your breakfast and we will deal with it." Richard agreed to his parents' request, but he was a little bit reluctant about leaving the kitten, because he and the kitten had grown rather close since he fed it just the one pistachio nut. So Richard proceeded to having his breakfast, and once he had his breakfast he said goodbye to his parents and left for school. But the little kitten was wondering whether or not it would see young Richard again. But that will be another story. The end. Well, everybody, I hope you guys very much enjoyed watching this video, and I really do believe it is immensely important to help out stray cats, not just stray cats, any stray pets, because the owners of Nixer and Potato, having seen so many of their videos based upon helping stray cats, I really do believe it is just the utmost immensely important to help all stray animals, all stray pets, cats, dogs, Komodo dragons, rabbits, anything pet, household pet-wise that's suddenly been thrown into homelessness of stray, which is certainly not something they deserve whatsoever. But I thought I might base this episode upon seeing what I've seen from the Nixer and Potato videos and what Nixer and Potato's owners do, helping out with the stray cats and all that. Indeed so. But thanks everybody indeed for watching, and I shall certainly see you in the very next video. Ta-ta, another time. From Foxy. Oh.